I think the most interesting thing that hasn't been discussed enough about the Canterbury earthquakes is that the September 2010 earthquake was like a trial run. We were so lucky to have that experience. And we created Gap Filler, and quite a few other community groups were created after the September quake because, in retrospect, it wasn't that bad, right? And we all felt really optimistic. Somehow, miraculously, no one had died. And we were like, oh, let's seize the opportunity. Gap Filler, for instance, ran 2 projects in November, December 2010. The February earthquake happened. We lost our house. Those of us who created Gap Filler, we lost our house. We had all sorts of other priorities. If we hadn't had the September kind of test run, I don't think we ever would have started Gap Filler after the February quake. So in some ways, the biggest lesson, and I've heard it in various guises in other cities, is that don't wait until the disaster to start creating the social infrastructure that you'll need for the response. You need to create that now. And so there are programs like, what was it called? Any Neighborhood Empowerment Network in San Francisco Bay Area, which is paid for out of kind of the equivalent of their civil defense earthquake response thing, and mostly they put on community barbecues. And that's actually a big part of the preparatory work, that recognizing if people know their neighbors, if they have social interactions, then when the disaster comes, they'll be in a better position to respond. And I think we can take it a step further, that, okay, community barbecues are nice, you might get to know a few people, but when you're actually doing something like building benches and planters and creating a community space together, you don't only get to know the people in your neighborhood, you get to know their skills and abilities and experience, so that later on, when it's needed, you can say, like, shit, half my house has fallen over. Rick knows how to wield a hammer, all right. After the disaster here, our experience was that, polarizing. Some people just wanted everything back as it used to be, and some people were actually really kind of deeply excited and saw opportunity to reimagine things. We've tried to create projects that actually appeal to both. So we're fulfilling some sort of need. All the libraries are closed, let's do a library-ish project, but let's do it in a way involving lots of people, creating new sorts of social interactions, being a little bit quirky and funky that appeals to the people on the other side of the spectrum as well. And I think if you can navigate that path and bring together people who are otherwise having really divergent responses, that's really vital here. I feel a great deal of sympathy for those in charge, because the truth of it is you have to do everything simultaneously. I'm not going to sit here and say the arts is more important than fixing the roads, but I don't think it's the other way around either. In a disaster, like, everyone has a different experience. Even 2 people who live next door who both lost their houses have widely different reactions to that. And yeah, for some people, getting shelter, getting the roads back in order and whatever is absolutely top priority. Other people, living in the west of Christchurch, felt incredible survivor guilt and all sorts of other, equally traumatic, but in a totally different way. And what are the things that those people need to feel okay? And so art is just one of the many tools in the arsenal, but it all needs to happen. Look, after a disaster, there's a hell of a lot of invisible work that needs to happen behind the scenes and in personal relationships and providing emergency supplies to places and things like that. And usually there are systems set up for that sort of response. The response that we saw a need for was actually a much more public one. So all of our projects are done in public space, and there's a high level of thought that goes into creating a spectacle in a way. And that has a real symbolic value, and I think that's why you see Gap Filler get mentioned a lot when people are talking about, feeling a sense of pride or optimism or something about their city after a disaster. I think there's a really strong symbolic value in making these big public gestures of maybe we're okay, or maybe we're not so okay, but we're battling on, and here, we're trying to have a little bit of fun in the midst of it, and that's been really important for a lot of people, more so than I ever, would have imagined. And so that's why I think, again, it's not just frivolous stuff, or, it's got a a shroud or a cloak of frivolity about it, but there's actually something a lot more going on there.